Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. On October the 2nd last year, dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi consulate here in Istanbul and was never seen again. His brutal killing sent shockwaves around the world. It gripped global headlines for months. It also had serious diplomatic repercussions for Saudi Arabia, especially for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who was implicated in the killing. A failed cover-up also added pressure on the Saudis to come clean, which they partially did. But had it not been for the coordinated efforts by Turkey to keep the world's attention, Khashoggi's death could have been easily overlooked. Melinda Nusifora takes a look at what role Turkey played as the events unfolded.
The killing of Jamal Khashoggi could easily have played out very differently in the media. The death of the Saudi journalist in Istanbul could have been written off as a bilateral dispute or a Middle East political issue. But instead, with Turkey's intervention, the story reverberated around the world.
A year ago, I wouldn't have thought, when I definitively knew that my friend Jamal had been murdered and he'd actually never left the consulate, that this would be a story as big as it is today. And I think it's a tribute to him, it's also a tribute to the media, it's a tribute to an awful lot of people that this story is actually still alive.
On October 2nd last year, the Washington Post columnist walked into the Saudi consulate to obtain documents ahead of his wedding. He never walked out. Within days, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan challenged the Saudi kingdom to reveal what it knew.
Buradan çıktı demekle kendilerini kurtaramaz. Ve ilgili merciler, onlar da bu konuda müddei iddiasını ispatla mükelleftir. Eğer çıkmışsa bunu siz görüntülerle de olsa ispat etmek durumundasınız, ispat edeceksiniz. Kalkıp da Türk makamlarına nerede bu diye soranlar önce bu nasıl oldu diye bunu sormaları lazım.
When Saudi Arabia failed to release any information, Turkish officials stepped in. A series of orchestrated leaks drip-fed the media for months.
We were all anxious to learn more questions. And I think, speaking of the Turkish government and investigators, I believe they did the right thing by sharing with the world the cruelty of what happened. And eventually, it helped all of us, it helped the world to understand.
Day and night, local and international correspondents camped outside the consulate in Istanbul. Every new car to arrive caused a media frenzy, and every person who left was scrutinised. The steady flow of new facts and evidence ensured the incident remained high on the news agenda and at the forefront of diplomatic discourse.
Biz tapeleri verdik. Suudi Arabistan'a da verdik. Amerika'ya da verdik. Almanlara, Fransızlara, İngilizlere hepsine verdik. Dolayısıyla buradaki konuşmaları filan onlar da dinlediler, biliyorlar. Bunu sağa sola çarpıtmaya gerek yok. Kesinlikle bu 15'in içerisinde bunun katili veya katilleri kimdir? Bunu onlar biliyor.
A United Nations report released in June found that Khashoggi was the victim of a deliberate and premeditated killing in the building behind me. It also found credible evidence linking Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the murder. 11 people have been put on trial in Saudi Arabia, but critics say the hearings lack transparency. A member of the UN team that investigated the killing says 1 year on, not enough has been done.
This is a disgrace, and it really is an affront to the rule of law internationally, that the international community has been so passive and has not been more demanding of the Saudi kingdom.
In an effort to refocus international attention, President Erdogan has again demanded to know where Khashoggi's body is and who signed his death warrant. Two burning questions that remain unanswered. Melinda Nusifora, Straight Talk.
And joining me now is Talha Köse, the chair of the Political Science Department at Ibn Khaldun University in Istanbul, and Daoud Abdullah, who is the director of the Middle East Monitor, a non-profit press monitoring organization based in London. He is also the former Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. So 1 year passed since the brutal killing of Jamal Khashoggi. We still don't know where his body is. There are credible evidence linking Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the Khashoggi's murder, and there are currently 10 members of the hit team are standing trial for which the international community knows little. So where are we?
Okay, I'll start. I think we are at the stage where the issue is not going away. This is what we can say for certain. After 1 year, the lack of accountability, credible trial and prosecution of those who were involved means that the issue is still alive. We've seen this in the media coverage across the Western world, and indeed the entire world. If you go down to Latin America, this is an issue that is still being debated in the media. But beyond that, I think the efforts of the United Nations Human Rights Commission also played an important part. They conducted an extensive inquiry into the matter, and the rapporteur, Mrs. Kalimad, came out with a very comprehensive report which pointed, it says that the Crown Prince has some questions to answer. So,
yeah, but for a further investigation, I believe UN Secretary General needs to request an international investigation to this matter. Is it possible?
It is, because the nature of the crime is not a domestic crime committed in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. It's an international crime, extrajudicial killing committed by the Saudis on foreign territory. Mm-hmm. This is an international crime. And so it violates a number of conventions, the conventions on the relationships, consular relations. Mm-hmm. So on that basis, there is a possibility of what we call universal jurisdiction, where even though Crown Prince Mohammed, he has not gone to the West, for example. Yeah. Even though he was not involved directly, we may say, if he goes to the West, for example, someone in London can file a case for his arrest and prosecution under the framework of universal jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. The crime was not committed in London or in Paris, but it is British citizens and French citizens have the right to make a case against this individual for committing an international crime.
Okay, let's take a look at Turkey's perspective. Turkish officials from the very first day kept the international community and interested in this brutal incident. Mm-hmm. What was the goal? What made the Turkish officials decide to keep up the momentum on Khashoggi's murder?
I think from the day one, this issue was tried to be presented as a conflict or a problem between Saudi Arabia and Turkey tried its best to differentiate, first of all, the Saudi Arabia. So this is not a problem between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Some group within the Saudi Arabia, so we have friendly relations with Saudi Arabia, but some group take this decision. So the other thing is that this is not a particularly just against Turkey, because Saudi authorities who take this decision violated diplomatic immunity and diplomatic relations between the countries. So this is at the same time a violation of international law and international diplomacy. So it is responsibility of international community to take some action against this. And the other thing is that the media publicity is very well used. So
why did Turkish officials leak the information bit by bit?
Because, I mean, increase the interest with the case and give information for the international media and take more responsibility for the media and press freedom. So this case is, I mean, diplomatic issue, diplomatic problem, is also violation of press freedom and violation of human rights.
Do you believe the Saudis cooperated with Turkey?
Unfortunately, actually, Turkey gave leaked information to allow Saudi authorities to cooperate with Turkey. That was the whole logic. So if they cooperated to address the issue, find out the case, it could have turned into maybe a little bit more closer investigation. But unfortunately, the authorities who involved in the issue or the crime did not cooperate with Turkish authorities. That's why Turkish authorities leaked the information gradually.
Yeah. So now Turkey demands the extradition of Khashoggi's murderers to face trial in Turkey, where they actually committed this crime. So is there any chance that Saudi Arabians would do so?
I doubt it very much, because you see, there's a line of command. You know, someone organized this, someone gave the order to execute it, and then we had the group who executed it. We know who executed it. They were caught on camera. But then who gave the order and who planned it? This is going right up to the top of the Saudi political establishment. And the fact of the matter is, some of those who came to Turkey were, we had at least 3 of them were bodyguards to the Crown Prince. So
very close circle.
Yeah, they all lead into his, into his domain, and this is a problem. If you bring these individuals to Turkey and they are prosecuted and they stand before a court of law, it is likely that the information that is really needed about who gave the order and who planned it, we will get to that end.
Tanya, after Khashoggi's murder, U.S. President Trump sided with Mohammed bin Salman rather than his own intelligence agency, CIA's assessment. He came up with a different conclusion. So is there a risk for President Trump to being so dependent on each other? I'm talking about Saudi Arabia.
Of course, I mean, the President Trump is not dependent on Mohammed bin Salman, but he has an important place in U.S. policies with regard to the region. So you remember those ties between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and also the unseen actor there was, Israel. So this new project to reshape the Middle East, and one of the important actors for this project was Mohammed bin Salman. So he was portrayed as a great reformer that would change the entire region. So there is a huge investment of US and the other international actors. So on the one hand, some actors within the US, the official actors, wanted to invest on Mohammed bin Salman, but this incident distorted his image. So after all these information, it will be much more difficult for Trump to side with.
But there's also going to be elections in the United States in 2020. So
yes, I mean,
what
the other
if the president changes?
Yes, I mean, the president may change, but some of the lobbies in the US support Mohammed bin Salman.
So, Daud, how would you describe Turkey-Saudi relations? Do you believe Turkey was a bit hurt because US President Trump sided with Mohammed bin Salman and the international community kind of remained silent to this
Certainly,
issue?
First of all, there is a question of national pride and honor. That such a crime, such a grave crime committed on Turkish territory, never mind the fact it was in an embassy, but in a consulate, the fact is Turkey's sovereignty was violated because you had this international crime being committed here. So in that sense, the relationship was undermined and suffered a serious setback as a result of the crime. Politically, again, it's very low-key. The Saudis, the Turks will not cut the relationship. They have to keep it going. But as we said earlier on, there's a distinction between the the Saudi establishment and the people who were involved in the crime.
Yeah, the President Erdogan also underlined in an article on Washington Post that they will continue to shed light on the murder of Khashoggi, but at the same time they'll try to preserve the friendly ties with Saudi Arabia, right?
He also didn't go to bin Salman personally. He chose to go to the king. He always had the link with the king rather than MBS because he was a suspect, a direct suspect. So he chose to go to the king in all his interventions.
Okay. I'm afraid we have to leave it here, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. The killing of Jamal Khashoggi put the spotlight on Saudi Arabia, particularly its young crown prince Mohammed bin Salman. Last year, he toured the U.S., meeting with business titans, tech giants and Hollywood stars, building himself up as a reformer trying to modernize his country. But his implication in Khashoggi's murder has tarnished that carefully crafted persona. Is that damage irreversible? And is the crown prince truly a reformer? Will his critics be proven right that his authoritarianism will eventually win out? To discuss this, joining me now from London is Saad al-Faqih, a Saudi dissident who heads the movement for Islamic reform in Arabia. Hello, Saad. Thank you for joining me on Straight Talk. Good to have you here. So since the murder of Khashoggi, no one has been held accountable. So you and the dissidents like you, do you feel more threatened than before?
It's an ironic answer going to be because the eyes are focused on Mohammed bin Salman, and because he wants to distance himself from incident, and because he wants to prove that he is innocent, he would intend to avoid harming anybody for at least some period. But having said that, the personality of Mohammed bin Salman does not work in a logical way. He is almost diagnosed by many people as psychopath, who does not calculate his actions and who lives himself in a very narcissistic way and does not care about the consequences. So logically, we are supposed to be safer than before, but keeping Mohammed bin Salman identity and personality in perspective, we
Yes.
should be more cautious.
Yes, very ironic. So do you believe the heinous murder of Khashoggi tarnished the crown prince's image in Saudi Arabia? And what does the royal family think of him?
On the level of the public are aware of the despotism, the oppressive nature of Mohammed bin Salman, because killing Khashoggi was not the first thing he did. He started the war in Yemen, the blockade on Qatar, the arrest of thousands and thousands of people, religious scholars, thinkers, writers, businessmen, lawyers, economists.
Is there a resentment among the Saudi elites for his leadership?
If you mean resentment, theoretical resentment, people are talking between themselves and expressing themselves in fake names on the internet, like Twitter and Facebook. Yes, there is a huge resentment. But if you mean public, open resentment, there is no room for resentment in Saudi Arabia. So, on the level of the public, yes, there has been refusal of Mohammed bin Salman even before Khashoggi, but because all the world media has been focusing on Jamal Khashoggi, his aura has collapsed inside the country. That's why people have remembered all his crimes before and put them together with the crime of Khashoggi.
But I believe he is also quite popular among young Saudis because he eased some social restrictions and granted women some rights. Are those just cosmetic steps?
Some journalists, some Western journalists, keep repeating that without any evidence. Actually, we conducted on Twitter, we conducted our own survey, and hardly 20% of people support Mohammed bin Salman. And even those 20% are electronic bots on Twitter who are very artificial. So if you conduct a real survey on the Saudi streets, very safe survey, you will hardly find 5% of people supporting Mohammed bin Salman. So this is an unfounded claim by Western journalists.
So what could you tell us about how much of an influence does he have and what kind of power he exercises?
Inside the country, he is running the country on his own. Usually, the royal family used to run the country in a consensus. They will respect each other. They will at least pretend to be consulting each other. Mohammed bin Salman is ignoring, not only ignoring, he's actually crushing and humiliating the rest of the royal family. He's imprisoning them, he was firing them, he giving them away, he is confiscating their money, and he is relying on people outside the royal family like Saad al-Qahtani, who has been involved in this incident, and the other person, Turki al-Sheikh, who have been given much stronger authority than the royal family. So the royal family itself is also angry with Mohammed bin Salman. But again, this the experience of Mohammed bin Salman has proved that the royal family again proved to be weak, fragmented, negative, and a piece of failure. They cannot do anything to him despite he's being young and has come just out of the blue.
So what do you make of Mohammed bin Salman's image abroad? Because, I mean, international community, particularly the US and some European countries, loved him and treated him as a Hollywood star. Only after Khashoggi's murder, we saw some European countries imposing arms sanctions on Saudi Arabia, but the US kept selling arms to that country. So does it make any difference?
Mohammed bin Salman's image was converted from a prestige in making relations with him into a liability. Whoever considers making a relation with him, he will feel embarrassed now. People try to distance themselves from Mohammed bin Salman. Now, the incident of Jamal Khashoggi has opened the Pandora box. People went back and looked into the Yemen war carefully and found it to be disaster. Looked back into a Qatar blockade and it discovered to be disaster. Not disaster in the human rights sense, but disaster in the Western countries' interest sense. They don't care about the human rights. They don't bother human rights. I mean, they have seen huge problems with human rights in Syria and in Egypt. They don't bother about them. And even they do not bother about human rights in Saudi Arabia before Khashoggi. But because the incident of Khashoggi was hitting in the middle of the international law standards, they moved and they discovered that Mohammed bin Salman is dangerous to their own interests.
So Saad, given the latest developments in the region, Mohammed bin Salman has softened his tone against Iran, and he said he doesn't want war in the region. He also agreed to an impartial ceasefire in Yemen, where tens of thousands of people were killed under Saudi-led air campaign. What do you make of his foreign policy now? Is he going a little bit low profile now?
Mohammed bin Salman does not have a clear strategy. He does not know what he is doing. He is driven by his emotions and instinct rather than ration and proper logic. He is very erratic. He jumps into decisions which he never consults proper consultants. I mean, he thought about selling Aramco and he found himself incapable of doing things, and he keep insisting that he's capable of selling it. It's impossible to sell Aramco. It's impossible to defeat the Houthis. It's impossible to win a war like blockade of Qatar. He just out of the blue imprisoned a real prime minister who's in the job of prime minister like Al-Hariri. So he is doing a lot of erratic, illogical behavior. So, what he is doing to Iran is worthless, because the problem is between Iran and USA. It's not between him and Iran.
Yes.
Iran is under very severe siege, and it is they are twisting. They're trying to force America to remove the siege by attacking Saudi Arabia.
So do you believe these mistakes and this horrendous incident taught him a lesson? Can he change in the future? Or if he continues to go unchecked, what kind of an impact it would have on Saudi Arabia's future?
This sort of personalities never learn. They don't learn from mistakes. Now, only 2 months ago, he made a huge mistake by attacking the legitimate government in Yemen, which has been sponsored by him. How on earth you support and sponsor a government and call it legitimate government, and you, with the Emiratis, you attack it in Aden and destroy their their army
infrastructure.
in favor of the separatists. Now,
Yes.
number one. Number two, he and Trump are two abnormal personalities, and they will definitely bring the area into disaster and either a conflict with Iran or a big problem with Yemen or even a problem inside the country. So we are heading into disaster somehow because of the behavior, unless somebody interfere and remove him.
Saad Al-Faqih, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. Appreciated your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Aisha Subarkar. If you've got any comments, do share them with us on Twitter with the hashtag Straight Talk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.